Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is Julie with Spirit of Matter. And the topic for this episode is a bit more lighthearted. And again, this goes to pretty much to everyone. So whether you're born into hermaphrodite cults, if you know, you know, okay? Or where you have loved ones, or where you encounter that in other settings. Um, Today I'm going to talk about basically psychology. And I believe I have addressed the um, challenge of psychology as a field and its insights from the perspective of changing times. Okay, for example, around the Me Too, both men and women psychologists they didn't quite get it. Okay, they tried to apply for the best of their advices to what the situation is, and a social change didn't seem plausible, but for you to set boundaries did, although that would set you up with a social change. Okay, saying no to what back then was considered narcissist, for lack of better terms, or borderline, okay? And or saying that don't make this big deal, it won't be big deal when this is your boss trying to get sexual with you. Okay, I'm not even talking about sexual harassment. I'm talking about like even the slightest the situations where you see you're talking to a person that is coming from post-trauma and is in this situation as psychologist and so on. So it was combinations of really trying to give their best selves and at the same time accommodating for changing times, because anybody who's doing anything, even astrology, even I was even teaching English, and the students that I had, they were going through things. So of course we talk about this, right? And so these places always meet us at some place, and we are changing and evolving with the people. And then depending to what level of encounter and what phase in your life, this is where astrology is excellent, because you, the astrologer, I know I had this, okay? I had times where I had to stop seeing clients, I was both unappointable and was going through stuff in my life, and I'm in my Pluto square. So this is no time so much always to give consultations. And the same thing with the other healing professions. Of course, you have to have working environment, Uranus and Taurus, that supports your ability to be competent with longevity in your profession. Okay, so if you have to take breaks, this needs to be facilitated. If you go into something in life, it needs to be facilitated. But sometimes something changes you from the core. And here I would really like to give shout out to the awakening spirit, and to give shout out to, well, a lot of I won't say name right now because I don't want you to run into like too much intimate information, because I commented at her channel, but I will say a name in future, who is communicating with ancestors. And what this prompts for me is that when it comes to psychology, okay, sun and moon, they matter a lot, not just eclipses and not just lunations. The left eye, the right eye, the heart, the womb, the mother, the father, or mother, mother, father, father. Patrilineage, in terms of ancestry, matrilineage. Now, psychologists are always like they're asking about childhood, they're asking about this, and they interrogate their own selves endlessly and relentlessly. However, when in order to be trained to be a professional, you have to go through academic training for most of them, and or some sort of training that requires you to be a member of a secret society, especially if, like your clients, you want to reach somewhere high in life, you want to do something with yourself, you want to climb up the ladder, okay, you want to be at the top of your game, and depending on where you came from, you either have to be born into certain bloodlines, or you have to be accepting a secret society with all that entails, including but not limited to raping children on tape for the cult. I've seen this with mathematicians. We had a colleague, not colleague, I'm not mathematician, but we had a mathematician, okay, friend, and he was a very, very, great, genius person. Then one day he was caught filming such films with his boyfriend, with a child, and we didn't understand why. And he was just coming back from Finland in a world conference, and very likely he had to be in secret society, and he had to do this in order to climb up the ladder. Now, because there were all these intrigues, then he was exposed, and his film was exposed to basically block him anyway from proceeding up the ladder. Okay, what was the level of choice? Was he coming from bloodline where he had to do this? I don't know. Okay, I don't know too much about him in that sense. But if you think that your psychiatrist, psychologist, your doctor, your lawyer, your even media school, okay, if you think that those people don't have to go through this, you have to understand, I can, with privilege of being outside the cult, although my name is Jungblood, okay, which I guess has ancestry with Masons. I don't know, because I never been in that. I know the family very likely has some of them, at least the family name, okay, because I don't know for to tell you. And not all people in lodges is the same. The different ranks, the different lodges, and so on. We're heading towards War of the Lodges. But the thing is that when it came to my second degree, I was expected to begin to accept certain type of relations that was no longer, and it was beyond the sexual harassment. There was the relations of a mind control and attempting to traffic students, and not just the female, also male. Gender studies, same. Okay, same. Women not exempt from that. You saw in Didi and Epstein parties, Didi's parties, you saw all the women and the men, all of them. Okay, so it's not a gender issue, although they do have depletion of the waters, okay? And this is where we get to the point where even well-trained psychologists, psychiatrists, okay, this is what a Pluto is, the hidden knowledge, and they would be in these secret societies. And so when you come and you deal with what we've dealt with, okay, people call it narcissistic abuse, then they notice there's some sort of synchronicity, but it's not benefic, and it's energy, and then nobody understands about it. Then you try to see who understands about it. Well, you meet the forefront of the secret society in the face of a psychologist, and they understand everything. They understand energy. They understand what you're going through. They understand all these things that they understand. But the thing is that at the time you challenge the very core perception about relationship between men and women, especially if they grew up to hermaphrodite cult, and the more trained your professional is, the more likely they are higher up the rank of these Masonic societies, Rosicrucian societies. I said this new moon gonna be rosy. Okay? So, and that means that people to various degrees have encountered that the sun and the moon are so malefically in such malefic situation, not necessarily in the chart, but these cults work on inverting anything that is of connection to the cosmos, to any type of religion or paganism, and including to Satanism, okay? And the thing is that people have to, this is what they see, okay? Whether it is in their family or in their secret societies, this is what they see. The way of them to get around this is is given by Sir Van der Kolk. It's given, and this is a good example of person that everybody were learning his teachings. The body keeps the score to heal from trauma. Well, he was encouraging people to rape children and women to recover from trauma of war. Okay, which of course further depletes the person who does that. And he's saying that of sexual trauma you can heal, but war trauma, I have no idea what is this, but you have to understand, young men that deal with trauma, that are born with this, and as children, they go through things, okay? Depending to if they grow to satanic ritual abuse, they grow to many things that sometimes can come up in front of the patient, especially when the patient comes from another world and they are awakening to the changes in the relations between the mother, the father, intimacy, sexuality, and all of these things, okay? Think about, for example, Esther Perel, a notion of monogamy, okay? Then I don't agree with her about everything around the sexuality, but definitely the way that she viewed monogamy, that came from Europe, is that we can't expect ourselves to be 100% monogamous, and if there is side affair or something like that, we look and see what needs are being met. As a relational astrologer and a person that studies Uranus is approaching her own Uranus opposition, I can say that you will have weird encounters that are meant to evoke, okay, something to be released. But when it comes to psychology and the way in which both the lunar lineage and the solar lineage have been so deeply infiltrated for so many generations, the very awakening and healing of patient can trigger sometimes the worst sides of the health professional. And this is where we get to the infiltrations of the sciences, at the very core, the hidden stuff, the psychology stuff, the occultistic stuff, and that makes it literally nearly impossible for psychologists to succeed in their job. And this is, okay, also giving grace to entire field, because it's very literally impossible for you to find psychologists that could say I am psychologist and not lie, and have certificate and have training without being member of secret society in which they're required to rape, to torture, to do astral sexual assault, to do group torture of people from afar, like MK Ultra. All these things, to participate in planning the next Holocaust, the next genocide, the next democide, okay? And it's literally, they genuinely cannot climb up the ladder and reach this status if they're not born or become of the materia that does these things. So you, the person that's looking to heal yourself, to get control of your life, everybody tells you, well, go treat yourself, or your behavior is toxic, go treat yourself, or get help, okay? And stuff like that, or more nicely, oh, maybe you need to tend to that, maybe you need to look at that. You go to look at that, and what you see is that you are the trigger to the core of the essence of the very own person that's supposed to help you, because you offer them a reflection of something that they never experienced, where you stand up to this type of behaviors, this type of... And remember, when we first began with understanding stuff that was called borderline and then narcissistic abuse, then entire community of psychiatry and psychology did not get it, and at first people thought, oh well, they're egomaniacs, then they're all like this, okay? They're the narcissists, so they don't get it. But when you understand more about satanic ritual abuse and the hermaphrodite cults and the secret societies and what a person has to go through to be in their rank, hiddenly, not just the certificate, then you understand that the chances are all stacked up against them to even attempt at treating you without violating your very core essence, because they never had, and they don't have to give of what they never had. It's not something you would expect to meet at the psychology. Okay? So, and these are the people who are supposed to diagnose people for work, for whether to get welfare, not to get welfare, for if they have trauma. Okay, I literally had cases where a person with trauma from sexual assault coming to psychiatrist, and psychiatrist telling them, no, it's not connected to your trauma, what you have mental ailment. And to put it very simply, when we curate psychosis with housing first and the open dialogue with the housing first, without housing first, open dialogue will not work. If it will work for a little while until solve the problem of residence, but usually with these people, they don't have a residence, they definitely don't have full ability to work unless they MK Ultra, and then they're being programmed and they're not working, they're just being slaves. Okay, to come out of slavery, you need to understand that, and with no pills, of course, and to believe the person. What these people say usually has to do with sexual boundary violation, especially when they're MK Ultra victims and so on. So know your craft is all I'm saying. Know your craft, and sexual boundary violation can be from afar, and it can be through psychological abuse. Okay, it's a violation of life energy, also psychological abuse, and again, it's not about blame, because people really did not know better. Just like with emotional intelligence, people genuinely did not know better. Same with the sexual intelligence, erotic intelligence, relational intelligence, the whole notion of attachment pattern and attachment trauma, I think, is not more than a decade and a half years old. In large, okay, before that, but in large awareness, where people became aware. And so this is a crisis that pertains very literally to the psyche of all people, because the very person who's supposed to assist you is in a covenant of people that every once in a while they have to sacrifice someone and do human ritual sacrifice, or try to recruit them to MK Ultra, especially. And if you heal from violence, they're not allowed to make you heal from violence. Okay, just as police was not allowed to prevent murder of women and murder of political assassination of women and men, it's not allowed. It's not that it doesn't want to, or that it is. It's not allowed. Their procedures just do not allow them to succeed. They have to give ultimatum. You either get kidnapped by police, or you get no protection by police. And it works for women, and it works for men, and it works for political assassination. Okay? The examples of Geert Wilders versus Peter R. de Vries, one is dead because he chose not to be kidnapped, and the other is literally in jail 24/7 because he agreed to have the security that the police gives in whichever conditions the police gives. So you see what allowed, what not allowed. If you think that this is not abusive, this situation is very abusive. If you think these people not assaulted psychically, of course they are. So back, if we take the way it works for the police, then you understand for psychology, psychiatry is working the same. And this is a deep crisis, because as you embark away from this type of modules, okay, and somehow you are still alive, because if they try, they would be assassinated. Or they would have to go to what you are going through, okay? So you get the situation of, for the power relations, is the tipping of the scale happens. Because you said no to violence and you perpetuated that no to violence, and now you're supposed to lead the path, but what they try to follow, they call this like vacuum, try to vacuum. And also they have to follow where they used to be dominant, right? You're supposed to be stupid slave to them, that will never get wise and will always pay for this money, for that money, and then go to work and pay for that money, and then sell your body, and then pay for that money, and then sell your soul. And that's what they're recruiting you. They're not treating you, whether it's consciously or not, but it's what's happening in the field. The people that cooperate, for as long as they cooperate, they get the roses, because they think they're going to recruit you. But the roses are Rosicrucians. And so just understanding that about the field can explain why most of the healing you would get from psychology, you could read, Van der Kolk and The Body Keeps the Score, and understand, like a normal human being, that you need to be active to take energy out of the body, to hit and shout for something that others not hurt. Yes, but the insider circles, and he hints that in the book they rape children. They rape women. Okay? So that's the difference with the common person that just had trauma and understands that to rape and to this is not going to get them out of trauma, and it's also quite horrid. Then they get chance to read even from this book to heal a little bit from trauma. But the person inside the cult, it's a different type of structure, of texture, of everything, okay? If I read Fanon and I said, oh, well, it makes sense for people to resist the oppressors, and then you hear one person raped, and you say, okay, probably they are going to get this person, and like the tribe, okay, to hug him, to make sure that he doesn't do it again, and for not to take his frustration out of innocent people, but yes, to take frustration out of useful resistance. No, I did not read Fanon well, because I don't come from these circles. That Fanon was preparation for Bassa van der Kolk. Well, it's open dialogue and housing first, and belief in the person, being active about the change in the issue, and to be believed is getting you to recover. And so you get people that were used to, and first of all, it's not their fault of what their upbringing was, but they're not always so aware that behaviors are so toxic, and it's very challenging because they really need to curate for lineage, which we all have to do. But here we're talking about lineage that is very closed, very not occultistic, but cultist. Where people didn't have even normal upbringing or normal birthing. And I don't talk about the cesarean, I talk about way worse things. Okay, you can watch through the Verstigen. And depending on what level with the cult the person is. And it's such a separate world that is a separate world not only from the world of people didn't grow up like that and come to them to therapy, okay, but also separate world from their own world because of dissociation, splitting, identity, and so on, that happens by the abuse of sexual energy, by rape and torture and electrocution, so that they will dissociate and have kind of like the multiple or dissociative identity is for mind control. And so what people remember, satanic ritual abuse survivors, is the pedophilia, and they think this is the worst of worst, right? But they don't go back and think about the mind control and what it served and to perpetuate for humanity. So, and also now that we are awakening to this as humanity, this stirs up many things. So imagine if we stick around with psychology, with psychiatry, that the very person who is supposed to be in charge, have an authority, not only their authority is challenged, but the very core essence of what they have to bring you is exposed as something that they still need to receive. And in culture where they grew up, they can't just take 6 weeks off, or 6 months off, or what more likely sometimes 6 decades off, because they have to heal from something that's a Holocaust. Okay, simply put, regardless of what bloodline, what origin, what race, what, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And this is also something to remember about what we are dealing with. And that pertains to the sun cults, moon cults, that were inversion of everything, okay, of everything. And that doesn't mean you cannot benefit from these people, or they don't have insights, or this or that, but it definitely means that when you say no to something that they couldn't even imagine that somebody could say no to, especially if that somebody is their authority, supposedly, okay, or whatever authority they think they have over you, or even if they work on that, and they say, yes, we're two sovereigns, but internally they're not used to having two sovereigns. They're not used to two shining suns in the room. Okay, I remember when I saw therapists writing, psychologists writing books about their patients, and when I was in therapy, I said, I think it's more reasonable that I will write a book about my process, but I would need for your input as well, and that would be completely changing for the power relations in therapy. I wasn't intending to do that, but it was like, it just makes so much sense that people will get to know what's inside therapy room from within the context of the patient. It makes way more sense. And then for the perspective for the other person, because therapy is supposed to serve for the patient, okay? And you could see a part of them was eager to that attention, but they were not used to genuinely be two shining stars with another person, and definitely not in a healthy, not mind control, not MK Ultra way. And so there's just so much. And so if this is what's happening to our therapy people, to our psychologists, to our psychodynamic, which is the dynamic of the relation, that with all the competence and knowledge and intelligence, they still falling like tower of cards, imploding from within, just simply because they grew up to cults of hermaphrodites, and they're within the cult still. And basically a psychologist is MK Ultra. So this is also not cautionary tale, but definitely something to tend to when people that are otherwise in these cults, okay, whether it's public figures, actresses, influencers, hidden decision makers, and everybody that wants to be somebody, business owners, okay, whatnot, top military ranks. It's important to pay attention to that, because people usually don't get professionals outside of the cult. Okay, and it's also when thanks to people like Trudy Verstegen, when we have exposure and testimonials, and thanks to satanic ritual abuse survivors, we have more appraisal of what person is dealing with. But still, it's for every person, both to find the recovery in their own, but also the need to meet needs and curate for something, maybe with talismanic work, maybe, okay, with unique ways to meet their needs in a way that is healthy, which is the essence of our therapeutic procedure, okay? Or growing or self-growing and establishing for our ever transforming identity. So this is again more things that are coming up, and you think about the fiscal situation and how the psychology. One of the things that I've been doing here with Mike On is completely challenging the way we budget. Okay, we can if there is transit upon transit upon transit of unexpected expenditure, way wiser would be to look at it and to flow with it and to structure society and resources accordingly, rather than to try to enforce some sort of very rudimentary Saturnian technique for something that is not at all of the nature of Saturn. And even Saturn, if you have Saturn retrograde, you do Saturn like Uranus. Okay, that is, and I have been pioneering in this. I saw no astrologer doing this. Mic on, definitely not an open show, but there are astrologers that talk about investments and so on, but no astrologer talking about the flow of expenditure, the way, but for the private person, money flying out of the pocket, the way that I talked about it when I do my expenditure or fiscal forecasts. Okay, and that is something that has completely renovated my way of looking at things, and holistic understanding. Not every unexpected shopping that you have is shopaholic or compensation for psychological. No, darling, if you need to eat your omegas, if you need your niacin, if you need your this to stabilize your nervous system like normal human being, this costs so and so and so at the grocery store. If you need your greens and to eat your greens, and you need to conserve the energy to do project to recover from fatigue or something like that, this costs so and so and so at the grocery store. Okay, if I buy ingredients for a salad and it costs me what would be equivalent of $120, and it's not many ingredients, okay, it's just a couple of greens, some tomatoes, a sauce that is not expensive relative to the prices, and some, hygienic pads. That's pretty much $120. But if I buy a salad outside, I can buy in that 3 salads, between 2 to 3 salads, depending on how fancy I go. And with that I can make top 3 salads. So you make the calculation and you see, if I want to make salad myself, yes. If you think the dressing stays for a couple of them, no. It's enough for those 2-3 salads. Okay? So all the programming that people had, and if you think, oh, I will not eat salad, okay, good luck, don't eat your greens. In how long you will start smoking, drinking excess coffee, alcohol, okay, or worse things, Why? Because your liver needs attention, the boundary is being violated, you're not being greenified. And what would be the antidote to this addiction? Well, all the greens you didn't eat. You know, compound interest, compound greens. You're going to have to spend all that money to balance the system back to where it should be. Okay? So if I hear nobody's talking about this, I will be talking about this. So people expect people that are homeless, that work, okay, not to buy their Starbucks coffee in the morning, or smoke some weed so that they don't completely collapse in the evening, or so that they do completely collapse because they need to sleep somehow. Let's begin with the fact that the homeless works. Okay? That's a friggin' trauma. And so, but your psychologists and psychiatrists, they are enslaved. Whenever they rebel or retaliate, they are tortured and they're mind controlled. So they have a persona that compensates for all these personas. That's kind of like the Holocaust. You have to pull through. Then there is another personality that comes in and does the job. Okay? That's beyond slavery. That definitely is not the antidote to your well-being, and definitely not your budget. So again, you see how the fiscal situation now plays into that, because you're expected to pay and pay and pay and pay and pay. But if you, God forbid, heal, you know that there are some theories where the patient is supposed to struggle in the to get out of the therapeutic relationship. Like they're supposed to aggressively struggle. I'm not joking. And again, I'm talking about well-trained psychologists that think that this should be how therapeutic relationship end, which is of course intense abandonment trauma for the psychologist and the patient. I had to forge my way out of murderous threats to my life that were not threats. There were attempts of assassination and political assassination, but I had no idea. But my therapist reads what I write on Facebook. Okay? Like, what are your biggest fan? So, gift of grace, okay? It's also to understand how this psychology thing plays into your recovery, but also plays into your housing, your wallet. And then they collapse within, so they try to hide that. Projections I'm not even talking about. And before you know, the person that slanders your name, sometimes more so than the offender, is your psychologist. Okay? So, and it's important that we are talking structure. Because I've been saying names and it's okay. You know, I said name, it's important, but the thing is again, it's beyond the person. There is a real structure here that is at work and at play, and it's all encompassing. If your psychologist used to be the shining star in the house, and the person who, man or woman, who kind of wears the pants in the house, and they run into patient that likes to have two shining stars. Okay? It's not you write a book over how it was to treat me and I get to say nothing and then see it at the bookstore. And what about my life? Okay, but for MK Ultra it used to be okay because my life would be mind controlled by somebody else. Okay? And it's not you mind controlling me. It's me speaking my voice and letting into what's actually happening in therapy. And of course, if you treat me respectfully, you could very well be a part of that. Okay, because you were, if that was the conversation, then that was the thing. And so the entire professional ego trip is collapsing into itself because it used to be the only sun shining in the room. Okay, when I began to take clients from astrology and later aromatherapy, the first thing I did was a podcast, because I said, when in the podcast, and what did I say? If you listen to my episode of where before I interview people, what did I say? I said, this is my inner child. This cosmology, this, that, this is my inner child. So with that, when I see people as clients, they are the shining star and I get to support them. Okay, so I don't deprive myself of being the little shiny girl that wants all the attention and all the limelight or all the this or that, all these childish needs to fulfill in a way that's healthy, that's supportive, to share, like I meet children every now and then, on the train and so on. They always have a story to tell with you, and they look at this and they look at that, and they tell you the star, we flew to here, we flew to there, and so on. They're always shining like that. We, as adults, we should not deprive of that. We should have our own means to express that artistically in whichever way we enjoy. And I wanted to make sure I meet that need, so that if somebody's with me in the room or with me in conversation, now I cater to them. Now they're the shining star. I help remediate what needs to be remediated in the chart or in the life story or what I receive, and they go and they shine and they do, okay, for what their dreams are, for this, everything, okay? And then I was interviewing people, and that was gorgeous. And then I became completely unappointable, okay? And I began to grow a garden. So that is one thing. But yet another is for those situations where the way that things were running, or the things that were okay in the cult, okay, like like sexual harassment is considered somehow okay in some context, let alone sexual assault, let alone in the astral, okay? And for the person that came to treat to you as patient, they came because it was obvious it's not acceptable. They were looking to recover from that. But if the therapist is doing that to people, to patients, to students, because they also work in academia in these situations, you understand, in conferences, in this and that, then what do you get? Especially for when we get to the children, and the person themselves has been very likely satanically ritual abused and had to perpetuate this, and then to decide which child is taken by welfare and which not, and then to treat the children at the emergency center. You understand for what treatment is that. And maybe one personality wants to save, one personality is child assassin, and my psychologist child assassin persona came out at me. not the enemy of the state, just a person trying to recover from what I begin to understand is close to satanic ritual abuse. And thereby creating in me almost child assassin, okay? But fortunately, because I managed to be where I am, fortunately, then I don't let for my truth to be taken advantage of. And if they try to do some ritual with the sun and moon, immediately I feel it in my eyes. So I wake up and it backfires. When somebody tries to do injustice to you, sometimes you feel it in your eyes. Pay attention. Then you go back to sender. You expose what you need to expose. Then to say the names is important, but also to expose the structure. Okay? The name, whether it's Itamar Yaron, or whether it's in Academia Yidu Nevo, those names are correct, these names. But the structure is telling me that even if you remove both of them from equation, structure is still this structure. And that is for why these things happen. So you say, a person holds accountability, holds this, holds that. No, it's to say the name of person is, when I was treating my teeth, I needed to say the name, that's it. Like, I don't question that. I can see how astrologically it plays out, okay? Because I tend to patterns that people don't tend to. I tend to chaotic patterns. I tend to non-linear patterns. I'm the person that sat in front of a physics lecturer and said to them, well, if we could look inside the earth, it all works with chaotic system. But with chaotic system, just like the thing when we regulate this gadget where we regulate the heart rate. I don't remember. It's like a chip in the heart when we want to put a chip in the brain. So we can regulate, okay, for also the weather, with me intending to help the body of earth to balance its energy. And I looked into the yin and yang and so on. And he looks at me like he saw a ghost. But this thing is done. It's just done malefically. And I am the person that knows more or less how it's done. So by the time I meet astrologer colleague that looks into earthquake, it's like, oh, there are patterns of triangles. Yes, Feynman told me that for I don't know how long. It's like triangles with the teeth, and I didn't understand what he wants. Of course, triangles, because you launch a rocket every time there's a triangle, so there is a freaking earthquake. Very predictive. Touché. The release from a hard aspect, okay, with earth involved, this is an actual earthquake. The release from a hard aspect, okay? The triangles, they're just launches. They are worshipping the pyramid god. Pyramid upside down, pyramid downside up, still the same pyramid. That's the thing. And already I have to do back to sender for people who try to target my sun and moon. All you have to do is think logically. All you really have to do is think logically. Okay? If you know the people who taught, like Feynman, you know some principles of physics, you know some chaos. Okay, you might not be able to have algorithm to computate everything, but if you think logically, you understand that the harmonious bisextile doesn't yield an earthquake, but a hard aspect released, or T-square released, and that's not a triangle. It's not just every triangle, okay? A very particular type of triangle. When that's being released, then we have, for sometimes when it's being perfected, but upon the release, we have the release of the energy. And we know that what mitigates things above and below is humanity. We're both affected by weather, but we're also affecting weather. So this is yet another thing to, yes, to pay attention to. And this is the same for your connection with spirit, connection with ancestors, and a connection with each other, and so on and so forth. So now that you understand this, you also understand that when it comes to litigation, then the opinion of psychologists, of psychiatrists, with the current perspectives we have right now, is at the very least biased, insuffice, perpetuating harm unintentionally at the very best case. And we know that the very best case is not usually the case, because this structure would copy paste to the court system. And to political agendas, okay? So again, we cannot talk about this Mars opposition Pluto without talking about structure. And the fact that all these strategies are now turned over. Kaput al goal, okay? They can no longer work. People no longer believe in these things. People no longer are willing to participate. And this is very good, because this remediates the karma of the people who did that. They're not to blame into what they were born. They're not to blame into what they were born. But for all of the attempts to take the power away from people, from patients, from this, from that, it turns over, and best that they will be exposed. Because for otherwise, Pluto is only going to the power to the people, okay? It's only going that direction. It's not going to the direction of and this is very important, because there is correlation between Aquarius and Beta Persei, and Uranus is still on Beta Persei for the ingress of Pluto, which is good, because they are trining. However, you cannot talk about the underdog and rape. If you raped someone, the raped person is the underdog now. If you put someone in risk of rape, they are the underdog now. Okay? Man or woman. There is no underdog against someone who's raped. Rape is a form of isolation of person from their own soul. So this is important to remember, because we still remember that on the trine, but if people wonder why the revolution goes offside, why it's not successful, because if they allow themselves to forget this, then they will get to the sky that punishes the land, and China is until today dealing with that. I think I need to say no more about all the ways in which China, for the millennia of dynasties, is still dealing with that sky that punishes the land, rather than sky yang, land yin, and the relation between them. Not punishment, not war. Dynamic balance. Why is China not China? Why Chinese are not Chinesing? Well, it's because this infiltration got the hold of the many dynasties and the many philosophies of a Chinese philosophy. that surely was not stupid. But for the sky punishes land, and yet the dictator would lose mandate of the heaven. It's true, of course, you lose mandate of the heaven, but if sky punishes land, you will always lose mandate of the heaven until you realize sky does not punish land, because this is your people thinking they are the sky god and rape their women. Depletes yin, depletes entire kingdom. Even if it lasts 500 years, what is lasting is something that everybody already is waiting for it to fall. And with Aries, it might. From within, kingdoms fall, not from outside. And there's so much in China that only this small correction could make people stop losing mandate of the heaven and start enacting the dynamic balance. Where is this infiltration coming from? Within China? Within the tribes that believe that, yes, but they connected with outside that. The Rosicrucians, the Masons. Then you get the Deadvans, that you get the Falun Gong. But do the members of Falun Gong that are Masons not do same thing to their own people? They do. Collapse of banking from China, did it come from China or did it come from Masons? We don't know. Okay, we talk about, again, the finances, the hidden power, the hidden finance, the hidden debt, the hidden lineages versus Mars here. And what is becoming very obvious. All that is based on slavery is enslaved. All that is based on slavery is enslaved. A free man, free person need not oppress another. And if your psychologist or psychiatrist find it difficult to contain that, then maybe they should dig up half moons in the Sahara and build containment. Not as punishment or exile. Okay, but with communities that do that. I don't know. Sahara is now already being reforested, so maybe they need another place. Maybe in their own backyard. I don't know. For all the rituals that they've been doing on women, and then they've been charging money for people to come to get therapy, then what happened? They changed the currency. If you're health professional, you didn't talk about housing first and believe in the patient, not just believe in the patient, but leaving them homeless so they don't even get to meet you because it costs $600. And only from within your closed circle said, I never been to asylum before. Okay, so you come from elite of elite. And you managed to stay away from these things and you realized it for yourself. Then you saw there's approach like that. And you don't make the connections that people who have that usually have no housing. And if they're women, and if they're marginalized, and if they're children, so you get your $600, then to change the currency. You didn't talk about housing first, independent of ability to work for unlimited time. And believe in a patient and supportive of the actions to change this, right? To exit violence, to exit the cult. Now you need people that were homeless people to bail you out. When you had a baby and a very lovely birthing, which is a lovely birthing story, and the this and the that, and all of this lovely, luxurious stuff, but now you're gonna need a home. You could say, I can help for what I can help. But to write something in your social media and say, without housing, this doesn't work perfectly. Because a person, I cannot talk with believe a person when they are hiding here, hiding there. Subjected to this very violence. You could say, I bring the approach here, but we must take care of housing first. We must take care for people, because otherwise our approach doesn't work. If I give you essential oil, let's give something that really stirs up a change in a person. I don't know, something like cistus, that's to break glass ceilings, and some sinews, I don't know, eucalyptus can be protective, and something that stirs you up, like even for, not for bodily use, but for the smelling, tagetes. This antifungal thingy that you put, okay? And I give you that and I say, good morning. Then you take that, you inhale that, you take a very deep breath of this concoction, and you remember childhood trauma, that you don't have anything to do with them but to break glass ceilings and find out your boundaries, and you're protected with the space. For some people, that's more than enough. Now you're going to talk about how your dad or mom or uncle did that and that and that to you on social media, because the oils dictate for you to get this trauma out of the body. Okay, if there is no court system support for you to do that, then you're going to have to go to another change. You go to another change. That's what this means. Okay, but if I don't tell you, listen, those oils, yes, they support to treat of trauma, but they are supporting of entire life change for you. You cannot stay the same. When I put Achillea on my teeth, I had to say names of people who risked my life with political assassination in Academia de Nouveau, and in also for people that mistook for what happening and didn't notice, like Shanice Arudi, which taught me aromatherapy, okay? And like psychologist Tita Marion. I had to say name. I had to treat the gums not to be inflamed with rage. The name has to come out of the system. But also the teaching about the structure. And so, of course, it builds up to, okay, saying that. If I don't tell you, yes, you're going to use these oils, and that means you're changing of what you have to change in your life. You're breaking through. It's entire thing, because you're not to blame for your disease. Your disease happens because you've been in structures that's been unsupportive, environment been unsupportive. It's not their fault, but that's the result, and that needs to change. And that oil is a support for this change. When I was in between houses, One woman hosted me, and I didn't even remember that I gave her offer about oils, like a clove oil. And she went through a very intense process with herself, and she thought to open a house where people would come to heal, to that. And she was trying her luck on me, okay, to be with me in the process. She realized through this journey that she cannot contain for my process. And so I had no place to be, okay, I had to leave. Of course, it was crisis. But she realized that her dream now got a more realistic appraisal. This is what it takes to do this. It's entire societal structures that need to work. It's not that I need to recover for my abilities to do things, which is also true, but entire society cannot be the same as when it was before I got to this crisis. This is the meaning of personal life crisis. Entire society cannot be the same. Because the whole understanding about crisis, the person choosing the best of their choices, what they have. Some of it is to learn more choices. Yes, I can take essential oil, I can build half moons, I can speak name of offender, I can go to do back to sender, okay? And even that, if it is more humane for them to get that than what they sent, and unfortunately the cases I've been dealing with is that was the case, I can do that. But also, for things outside, need to assemble, need to change. And they are. It's in changing time. There are windows that open for that. And that is also for our psychologists, our psychiatrists, our healers, and even those who talk about the social context and healing within context. Well, you need to have a house for that context. And not a house where somebody can try to get out a few things that you're not okay for. That the housing needs to house. And this is again how both the physical changes, the power relations, the perception on bloodlines. I've had receiving from tarot readers or channelers. They did not know that a person also from this bloodline can do this, or can be empress, or can be this, or can be that. And I'm like, okay, one time I see maybe it's for another viewer, because it's collective readings. Then another time, then another time, then another time, like, who is they? Ah, there are Empresses Jungblut. Yes, there are Empresses Jungblut. Whatever Empress means, okay? It's just a person that connects with connection, okay? It's just thinking and channeling, and that's that. So this is also changing of what we think about our bloodlines. That being said, blood Mars. It's not that this Mars cannot do this, cannot do that, but it is true that some, even from different bloodlines, what the Mars affects what the person, what kind of warrior the person is. Okay, what my Mars rules. It's understandable for what I do, okay? And and again, bringing it back to psychology and the sun and moon. Of course, there are things that we learn and behaviors we learn, and most people grew up with family that at least mother or father, one parent more dominant than other, um, and I'm not saying there were not good things about this upbringing, okay? But for the expectations that it will always be the same as upbringing, it's not the same, and the people need to understand: do they want to change for that, and what do they see as change? Okay, what do they want? They can try it out and say, well, it's not actually authentic to me, or I like to cook, or I like to, okay, to be that more dominant person. Try to find the people, but when you go to therapy, this affects for things. If you think that she will be happy when she will have children, when she will this, when she will that, and like partially maybe you're correct, but will you be the husband that assists her with most of the things that she will never do? Like your mom, or anything remotely close to that. Because if you just keep criticizing, judging and criticizing, and now she cannot do anything, and she cannot even do you. Okay? My mother was different. When my father had a fight with someone who thought he was from the UN, and he had to eat only juices after that for 2 weeks, he didn't lose a kilogram. Okay? I hope to never stand in this situation. Okay? On other hand, my mother said never marry person from other culture, from other country. I went through that. It is terrible. Not the person, but everyone around. And I see, if I try to think about for my country or for my culture, where I reside, at least, I don't see myself snipping off the penis of my children. Okay? Let's put it very clear. But I also don't see myself sacrificing the first child to the god of, I don't know, for the snake goddess that I asked of her, what do we do to abolish satanic ritual abuse? And I didn't know that the sacrifice of these things to her. Like we talked about it, grow some hibiscus. But then it's also important to keep authentic about what you like, okay? Because for some people, they do like to be, if okay, one person more dominant, or one person is career person, or one person is more like in the limelight, and another person can be more introvert. And sometimes these polarities, they work, but are also not for everyone, okay? And that pertains when therapy, okay? When your therapist thinks you would be a happy housewife, and he doesn't tell you that, but his premise, with the years of him stalking you after you left therapy and his life threats together, at least tried, begin to insinuate that, then something inside him fractures or challenges, because like it's their own part, like that they're examining themselves, okay? And really, I want to also summarize with the fact that I got also a lot of good things from psychology. Okay, but to know about attachment patterns, the fact that there was awareness of traumatic attachment patterns of CPTSD, that it changes your neural network, the way that people can have certain equations in their minds or certain patterns of or paradoxical thinking, or like there are many things good in that. I'm not downplaying what we can do with ourselves for ourselves, the other way around. And it's important to put these things in context, because when you read books of astrology, also for astrology is relevant, but books of psychology, and you get benefited, and then you go to therapy, you think, oh, finally, I'm going to get a therapy, and you run into basically the cult that you're coming to heal from. Then that's a little bit of a big deal. And when somebody cannot see you shine outside of their control, and that somebody is high rank in the cult and was your psychologist, Itamar Yaron, and you ran away from something like that in academia, Ido Nevo, then is creating a bunch of things that need to untangle. Because this way, no go. Let the person be. Free person need not oppress another. So, thank you for watching.